So now that we know how the wiki works, it's time to create a test. And what I said before, you can use this to test Java. We will now look at how we test a web application without writing Selenium Java code. Just by using a table, we're gonna test a web application. So this fixture, the glue between our wiki table and the system that we want to test, the web page we want to test, is already written for us. It's just a plugin in FitNesse. And that's where we make use of. Here is an example of a test to test the calculator application that we tested before with Selenium WebDriver. Let me show that in a demo. So I have now my suite. Let's take test 1 and let's edit this. So I don't want this table. And I have my test. So without typing it all in, this is my test. I can format it, can save it. So what is it? The first one is that this, you can always copy paste, it's always the same. Basically what it is that FitNesse has different types of tests. It has fit tests and slim tests. The fit test, that's where the name FitNesse comes from, was used in the beginning days of FitNesse. Later on they changed it and now we use slim tests. The thing is, when you use a slim test, you have to specify this, and this is basically telling we use a slim test. So you can forget about this, everybody uses always a slim test. This is basically the same as a class part in Java. FitNesse is written in Java. It's just a Java application. That's why if we press the test button, we get an exception, a Java exception. So this is basically telling the class path. So we need fitnesse.jar, that's the library from FitNesse. It needs to find the fixtures in the fixtures directory. So this is just a class path that you normally have, but now in a wiki. Then in Java, if you use classes, you have to import them. This is how you import in FitNesse. So I basically import everything I could ever want. But this is my import, and import is nothing else than a table. So if you look at edit, this is a table, starts with import, and then here are all my packages that I import. So it's nothing else than a table. So everything is a table basically. Then, if you remember yesterday with Selenium WebDriver, the first thing we need to do is create a Chrome driver. Well, that's basically what you do here. Your table starts with a script. I'll come back on this later. This is a script test. And this is always the same, Selenium driver setup. It's a convention, you need to use the text. And then you say, oh, actually this is the name, this can change. But this is always the same, start driver for Chrome. This is basically starting your Chrome driver, your web driver. So that fixture that you use, that is already included here, that's in these packages here, just uses Selenium WebDriver. And then here's now my test. Now you can see the difference. Yesterday with Selenium WebDriver, you have find element, driver.find element, driver.quit, element.click. Here we create a table, and the table starts with script. It's a script table. The name is called browser test. It's a browser test. That means It's an HTTP test, and HTTP pages. And then I say, open this URL. That's this URL where I want to go to. You've seen that yesterday. And then I say, click. I want to click. On what do you want to click? This is the locator of the element you want to click. Like yesterday you say, find element by name and then for. This is if the HASAC plugin sees this, it does exactly the same, driver.find element by name for. And then it clicks on it. So it clicks on the button 4. Then it clicks on the button add, clicks on the button 3, clicks on the button equal. And then I can do a check. This is a Selenium command. Oh, sorry, a FitNesse command. Check that the value of the field with the locator name is text is equal to 7. That's what it says here. So now if I run it, you will not see, because what it will do, it will actually open another Chrome. On my screen I see that. In the tool that I use to record this, I only show this screen. There's this browser, but you don't see the other browser that comes up, but it works exactly as we did yesterday with Selenium. A browser will come up, the calculator will show, you type 4 plus 3 is, and then you see that the value is 7. But now in this page, what you see, everything is green. So, one right, nothing wrong. Everything worked correctly. Everything is green. So now what I can do, so this is something that I can show if I talk together with the product owner, and once the product owner gets to know what it is, or I explain as a tester what it is, then we can talk about this. It is really how your calculator should work. But the nice thing about this also is, and I said nice, it's an advantage and a disadvantage, is the tester who writes this table doesn't need to write code, doesn't need to know writing code. So the best practice is that testers can write code, but that's not always the case. But now let's say I want to add another test. So I go to edit, and the only thing I have to do is this table here. I just copy it, paste, and then I go to the same web page, but now I want to add, I want to say 1, well, 1 is add, and then 1 plus 3 equal should be 4. I can format it, I can save it, and now I have 2 tables. That's how easy it is now to make a test. Well, I test it again. It will start up Chrome, start the calculator, do the first calculation, and then start over again, do the second calculation, and then it's done. And what we see here, this is correct, this is correct. What if I make a mistake? So I have now 6. And I run it. So it will open the browser, do all the stuff, and then it's red. So here it says I expected 4, but I got 6. something is wrong in my calculator. So let's fix it. So let's make it 4 again. And what I can do is copy this, save. Oh, sorry. What I need to do, I copy everything, save, and go back to test 2 and edit. So let's say here we want to test the multiply. So I have to check the locator of the multiply. So let's do that. So that's this one. Go to inspect. And it says name is MUL. So this should then be, instead of add, it's now MUL. And 4 times 3 should be 12. And this is also MUL. 1 times 3 should be 3. Save. So now this is test 2, testing multiply. This is test 1, testing the add. And let's remove this one here. So this one, I also put something in there, but let's remove it. So tools, delete, yes, now it's gone. Let's remove the suite also. Delete, yes. So now I have a nice suite with 2 tests. So I can go to test 2, say test. Takes a little bit of time. But it does the multiply, that one was correct. That one is correct, so everything is green. Now I go to my suite and I say suite, and now it will run 4 tests. 2 for add, 2 for multiply. So you see here is test 1. Does this. Then we get the next one. Then we get test 2. Starts up the browser again. Does this one. And then the last one. And then we're done. And then we see we have here everything is correct here. That's how we write tests in Selenium. So I just gave the demo because you can read it better than with here in the slides. This is that same test with 4 add 3 equal 7. Now, in there was a check. Check the value of the field with the locator name is text should be 7. That's this check here. Check if the results are equal. What you also can do is you can have a reject or an ensure. These two are for booleans. A check is for checking values. Is this the same as, and then it's basically text, what you type. Even if it's a number, it's just text. If I log in, then I should see the welcome message. Then I use check. With reject and ensure, you can check if something is true or false. So ensure is true and reject is false. Check if a field is false. Typically you don't use that much with the testing web applications because you're going to check strings basically. But this is typically if you use Java, if you test Java classes, that can be handy. You can also do show. Show is basically show in the output, in the table, the value of the web element with this locator. You can use that for debugging. show, let's say you type in username password and you just say show the username and password in the output table. And then you get a result, and if the result is wrong, you can see, okay, what did I enter in these values? What is the value of username and what's the value of password? And you can also do a note. That's basically a comment. Same as a comment in Java is a note in your table. So this is things you use in your table, like here, this check here. If you put a note somewhere here, it's just commented out. Now, the first thing you always need here, start my Chrome driver. There's also drivers for other browsers, but in FitNesse, the FitNesse that you get from me, I installed the latest Chrome driver. So you have to make sure that only works if you have the latest Chrome browser. If you have an older version, you have to change that driver. I will explain that in the exercise. And then here is the import. Here, so this is basically the setup. Do the import, start the Chrome driver, and here's my test. And then this is basically my end here. And you don't need to show run summary, but stop driver, it stops the Chrome web driver. Now, this part here is always the same for every test. This part is also always the same for every test. So what I can do, I can put it in a suite setup page or a suite tear down page. Similar if you have a page header and a page footer. I can put this in a separate page, a suite setup and a suite tear down page. So let's do that in a demo. So the first part every test needs to have. So you have to copy paste that for every test. So what I'm going to do now, I go back to this my suite with the two tests. I'm going to add a new, and that's a static page called suite setup page, and I put the content later. Save. And I make another one called suite, what was it, tear down? Tear down page, if I remember it well. Save. It's suite set, the page should not be there. This should be called rename. It's suite setup. And the other one should be suite tear down. Okay, then what I'm going to do, in test 1, edit, I remove this part here, because that's the same for every page. I remove it, save it, and go back to my suite setup, and I put it here. Save. That's my suite setup. Then I go back to test 1 and edit, and then the last part, stop the driver, remove it, save, and I go to suite tear down, edit, paste it here, save. So you see actually, if I look at test 1, now, you see here, included page, my test suite, suite setup. If I open this, this is the content of suite setup. And if I go to the bottom, you see here's test down, tier down. Can open it. This is what I have there. So why do I want to do that? Because now my page is very nicely clean. I can put all kind of text here. It has only the tests, 2 tests. That's all it has, and these 4 lines here. So now I go to test 2, and I can just remove this part because that's also, I get it for free in my suite setup and tear down. Save. So this is also a very simple page now. Now let's test this, see if it works. We don't make a mistake. Yeah, everything is green. And now I could go to my test suite and everything should be green again if I do all the 4 tests. So this suite setup and suite tear down, this looks like the before and after method, but now of a suite. So it has to do all 4 of tests. So you see running all 4 were correct. So that's what I do here after, but that's what I mean here. You can put it in a different setup and tear down page. Now, in these tables, you can place all kind of commands. I go over this very quickly. That is more the documentation, but we've seen already open. Open a specified URL. Go to a certain web page. Click is typically on a button or a checkbox, a radio button, everything you can click on. Click with a locator. You also have click is available. It checks if that is available. And you can also have double click. So here's an example. If this is my web page here, I say open this web page, and that web page, when it opens, it has 2 checkboxes, and what I do here now is check if the value of the web element with this locator, so you see here I use an XPath locator, it's that first checkbox, the value of should be false, so it should not be checked. And the second checkbox, as this one, the value should be true, because that one is checked. If you open that web page, that second one is checked. Then I click the first checkbox. I click the web element with this locator. Then I click the web element with this, basically the second checkbox. That means the first checkbox should be checked and the second one not. And that's what I'm going to check again. The first one should be true, the second one should be false. Let's click and open. You have enter to enter data basically in input fields. You have select if you want to select something in the drop down box. You have type the text in the current active element. You have clear, have value of, gets the value of a certain input field. You can get the page title. So here's an example. I go to this URL, that's this web page, and I say enter this text as, and then here the locator, ID is email. That's the locator of this field. So it enters that text. Then I say click, retrieve password, and that's this button here, retrieve password. And then I say check value of ID is content, that's this one, ID is content. The value should be your email has been sent. Your email's been sent. Then a drop-down box here. I go to this URL, that's this drop-down box. I say select option 1 for ID is drop-down. This value option 1 is this one here for the element with locator ID drop-down. Then I say check value of ID is drop-down. It should be option 1. So it's basically learning a language to call web pages and do actions on web pages. Well, you have scroll over a certain locator, hover over, give me the current URL page, the back, forward and refresh buttons of the browser. Wait. So yesterday we looked at waits. So you can wait for certain things and how long you should wait. Tabs. You have different, you have your browser can have different tabs, and you switch to the next tab or the previous tab or close a tab or count all the tabs. Give me the current tab index, open a new tab. All these things you can do. You have table commands. If you want to do something with a table, give me the value of this row column. Click somewhere in a table. And show. So here's an example of show. This is my calculator, where I click 4, add 3, equal, and I say show value of name is text. Show the value at this moment of the element with the locator name is text. Then what it will do in the output here, show value of name is text, is 7. So the value of that web element with locator name is text is 7 at the moment. Then I check if it is 7, and then I do cancel. That means my calculator starts at 0. Then I say 4 multiply 3 equal, show the value, and then it says it's 12. So show is handy for debugging, but you can also leave it on there so to look at the test if it's correct, yes or no. You can set the browser size, similar as what you could do in Selenium. Selenium WebDriver, you can set the browser size, the width, the height, etc. So here I have a sample where first, we're not going to look too much into this, but here basically this means I have a variable called width1 and I get the current browser width. I have a height1, I get the current browser height. Then I go to a URL and then I set the browser width to 400. Later on I set the browser height to 600. Then I set the browser size to the width and the height the variables that I started off with. So basically I start off with a browser with a size, then I make it, let's say, bigger, and then I go back to the same size that I left off. And at the end, I set the browser size to maximum. You can also take a screenshot. How does the web page look at this moment? So it basically says here, show, take screenshot, and then you give it a name, photo, for example. And then in your output, you get to see a screenshot of how in this case, the calculator looks like at the moment. That can also be handy for debugging. And then selectors is typically by ID, by name. So here I say enter Chicago as ID is calc from field. So this is the from field here. And I enter Chicago there. And then here I have the ID calc2 field. I enter New York. Then I click the button with this expert location. It's this button. And I check the value of the ID is drive distance. That's this field here. If this text is in that field. Now there are different browser test tables. So if we go back to my example here for test 1, you see here the first test I do is 4 plus 3. The second test is 1 plus 3. Well, I don't want to copy paste this 100 times for all the tests that I need to do. So what I can do is an test-driven we call it test-driven test, and we create a table with all the test data that is used by this test. So it's a table test. This is a script test. A script test basically says, do this, do this, do this, do this, check this. It's a script test. So how do we do that? We have a table template test, a data-driven test. So a script test starts with script. A table template starts with table template. That's the difference. Here we start always with script. Here we start with table template. Now, a table template is similar as a method that you write in Java. If you have copy-paste of a lot of actions you want to do, then you don't do that. You don't do copy-paste. Now, these actions that are always the same, you put in a method, and you have variables. You have one method, and you call this method multiple times. That's basically a table template test. So I give it a name. I call it test calculator. And what do I do? So this is my method here. And every time you see the @ sign with these curly brackets, these are arguments for my method. So I have a method. It's called test calculator, and it has 3 arguments: a value 1, an operation, and a value 2. Then, what is the content of my method? Well, open this URL, click name is, whatever you get as argument value 1, click name is, whatever you get as argument option, click name is, whatever you get as argument value 2, click name is equal, the is button, and then you say, basically, I have an return value, and then in Java you can have only one return value, but here you can have multiple return values. But I have a return value that I call result, and that return value gets the value of the web element with locator name is text. So you could say this method gets 3 arguments in and it returns result. Then I always need this script browser test. So you always have that also with a table template. So we had that already here, script browser test for a script test. If you have a table template test, then you also have this one row here, script browser test. And below, so this is now my table template, that's my method. And here I create a table where I call my method test calculator, that is the same as here. Basically you say call the method test calculator, and these are the 3 arguments, value 1, operation, and value 2, and check that what you get back, the result value, is equal to whatever I have in my table. That's why we have a question mark. This is what you need to check. So what will happen now? FitNesse will read the first row here. So it gets 1, add 1. So it calls the test calculator with value 1 is 1, operation is add, value 2 is 1. And it goes through it. At the end, it comes here and it says results should get the value of name is text. So it's 1 add 1, it should be 2. So result gets the value 2. And then I check the result that I get back is equal to 2. If that's correct, it goes to the next line. If it's not correct, it fails. Also goes to the next line where it will give an error that data is not correct. And then it goes to the next line. It runs the same method again, but now value 1 is 2, operation is add, value 2 is 5. And it sees that the result should be 7. It goes to the next line. 5 multiplied 2 should be 10. 9 subtract 1 should be 8. So instead of copy-paste this 10 times and then change the names here, the 4, the add, the 3, and the check here, I create a method that I can reuse. So it's one method, I write it once, and now my table I can add any calculation I want. I only have to add it to the calculation. And this is what I meant, even the product owner can add its own tests, because typically the product owner does not know this, but the product owner can do this. 9 sub 1 is 8. Well, yeah, I can do that as long as I know these locators, or I can just copy these locators. I can add new calculations to this table. So whenever you have a lot of data that you want to use on a certain page, log in with this username password, log in with this username password, log in with this username password, you want to use a table template. And as last, there's another test. It's called a storyboard test, which is similar as a script test. So what's a script? Do this, do this, do this, do this. The only difference is, so if your table starts with storyboard instead of script, the rest is the same, it will take a screenshot after each action. Most of the times these screenshots are very small, so typically you don't do that. But for debugging, that might be handy just to look at the page. How does that page look like? So now, stop this lecture, this part is over now. Go to the second part of the lab, where we make our own tests, and then also a data table test.